Hi, this is James A. Full Capital. I'm here with Dax Ferguson with Heritage. Thanks for jumping on, Dax. I think like every construction project, sometimes our IT stuff can give us issues, but the show goes on, right? The show goes on and the project gets complete. So thanks for jumping on. Maybe to kick it off, just give people a little bit of your background, your firm's background, and sort of what you guys focus in on.
Sure. So started Heritage in 2011. Started in single family, dabbled in multifamily a little bit, and then in end of 2015, early 2016, we went full force into multifamily and only multifamily. So that's kind of what's brought us to where we are today. We started in Texas. Texas is home base for us, then ventured off to Atlanta and a few other states, and now we are nationwide. So we work in most states. Wherever customers bring us, that's where we work. Multifamily rehab, we currently do not do ground up, but just rehab.
Okay. So when most people give you a call, are they typically looking at a new deal? Are they looking at an existing deal? Where are they sort of in their deal process?
Yeah, so we typically, we have a due diligence department and we take it all the way through CapEx execution. In doing so, we like them to bring us in kind of as they're creating their LOI and before they submit it and go, hey, we're going to submit an LOI, probably have a little back and forth, but in the next few weeks, this deal looks pretty good. And we'd like to bring it all out for the due diligence piece. And so that's when we kind of get involved. Let me just say that's when we like to get involved. A
Right.
lot of times it's, hey, submit an LOI and they've accepted it, and I need due diligence in the next, 10
I need
days.
I
And I'm
need I
like,
need to
oh
be
yeah,
I need you to be there tomorrow. Are you available
right.
tomorrow? Like, yeah.
Can you work that out for me? So, we do have those, and we are able to accommodate as some of those as they come through. But we typically like a week or two notice to kind of get a heads up. And what we do is we pencil you in, and then if it moves a day or two, that's not the end of the world, but it's just to kind of give us an idea of what's coming up. So that's kind of where we want to get involved. And then from the due diligence phase, we kind of help create your CapEx budget. People go, oh, I have $10,000 a door to spend. I'm like, well, where do you want to spend it? And they're like, well, I want this, 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 and this. And you're like, well, that's actually $14,000 worth of stuff. So where do you want to pare down? And they're like, no, 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 I want it all for 10,000. I'm like, well, good luck and let me know when you need my help. But really, I just help them kind of massage their ideas and what's reality and help them create that budget. And then that's what obviously they submit through lending with a detailed of, hey, this is where we're going to execute on our CapEx dollars. So that, I think it makes your job easier, right? When you go into lending,
Oh,
hey, this
absolutely.
is the budget, but this is where we're going to spend the budget, not just, oh, we're going to spend $10,000 a unit. So we help create that for them and then they execute. And then at the end of the day, lender goes, you budgeted 10,000, but I only really going to give you 9,000. So then we help kind of dial that in and figure out where they're going to, shave off $1,000 and not lose a lot of the money that they're expecting to raise rents and things of that nature. So we kind of walk handhold through that whole process. And then we like to kind of mobilize on day one after closing, right? So it's, hey, we're ready to rock and roll. We're closing, sign contracts, do all that stuff. And then we're, we're on to the races at that point. So
So let's I'm going to try something, and you've done this enough. Hopefully you can do it on the fly. So 200 unit deal in Dallas, let's say 10,000 a door. So I hope my math is right, but let's say $2 million budget, a
good
million in,
math.
a million inside, million outside.
Mm-hmm.
Where just on a typical sort of 1980s deal, where does that million go? And then where does the million go on the interior? So if you had, exterior,
Yep.
what's sort of typical for, your value add syndicator out there?
Good. Good question. I'm going to start with exterior. Um, painting the exterior is a number one factor in drawing people into the property.
Okay.
It shows people driving by, hey, we're here, we're taking care of this property, we're doing something, there's something exciting going on. So it typically draws people as they drive by if you're looking at drive-by traffic, right?
Okay.
So that's always a big factor there. I'm going to assume their roofs are in good shape.
Okay.
in this scenario. If they need a little bit of work, we do what's called a walk and seal, and kind of all your roof penetrations, they walk and they caulk them to make sure that everything, no rain's getting into that. But that's a pretty easy thing to do.
Okay.
Lighting is a huge a, safety. I would
Sure.
say for safety reasons, I like to make sure your lighting is really good on the property. So I like to start kind of painting and lighting. After that, kind of my go-to is creating a community inside the community, the apartment community. So where there are common spaces, where it's outdoor kitchens, pergolas, gathering spaces to bring your community together. Because a lot of really good things happen when you have those spaces for them to hang out. So creating those spaces around the property is always good. So that's kind of the exterior, my kind of go-to items, if you will. I think playgrounds are great. Playgrounds are expensive. So it may not get the return. If you don't have a playground and you want to add it, they seem to get really expensive, and it's for a smaller group of the people. And I think where you can accommodate the majority of the property is a better use of those funds. And that's kind of generally speaking. There are uses for playgrounds. I'm not saying never do them, because we do them a lot. But if you're a limited budget, I wouldn't spend your money there first. And then
What
you
are,
go to the interior. Go ahead. You want to go to
um,
the interior?
well, maybe I was already thinking about interior, but what do you consider like the gym, leasing office, that type of stuff? Is that considered interior? Or you consider that exterior and amenity? Because
So gym
yeah,
and leasing office, I consider interior
okay,
pieces. And I'll say something about that. Gyms are nice on paper, but they're rarely used
right.
in apartments. And depending on, I mean, are you dealing A class property? I mean, you have to have one, but how much are they used, right? Are they going to the gym down the street where there's more people there, more equipment, and things like that? So I'm hit or miss on those.
Okay.
Leasing office, you need to have a good wow factor walking into the door. And I don't think you have to spend a lot of money there. One
Okay.
of the things that I like to do on a leasing office is your leasing office doesn't need to be any different than what your interior units are. You need to keep it the same level. Some people go in and go, "Oh, I'm going to spend, $500,000 on the leasing office and really overdo it," and then they walk into the units and they're not to the same standard, right? I'll just
Disappointed.
use that. Yeah, they're somewhat disappointed.
Right.
You don't want to set that precedence for what your interiors are going to look like. They can't be that drastically different. Do
Okay.
you decorate it a little better? Sure, all that's fine. But as far as your finishes, if you use granite in the interior, use the same granite in your office. If you use vinyl plank flooring in your units, use the same vinyl plank in your leasing office, because they're already going to get that feel when they walk into that door of what to expect when they walk into the unit. So
Oh,
I'm really big on that. Maybe you do a little fancier lighting fixtures because you have some opportunities to do that. But other than that, I wouldn't go crazy on that. On interior, um, I
units. Yeah. Interior
yeah,
units. Are we going
interior
to units?
units.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was actually having a meeting about this today. Um, a lot of people have always historically, myself included, said if granite is not going in, if the area, the demographic, or whatever of that area don't typically have granite, don't use granite. Let's just resurface.
Okay.
I am actually starting to change my tune on that. And here's why. As you know, people are going to have to hold their properties a lot longer today than they have in the past. You normally had, we're going to hold it for 5 years and sell it, but reality is they hold it for 2 or 3, hit their 5-year performance, and then they sell it. Today in this market, I think they're going to have to hold it a little bit longer.
Okay.
And so if you go to a hard surface, you're not going to have to resurface every time that unit turns. And so you're not going to have to spend that money on the resurfacing every time if you have a hard surface in there. So general pricing, right? If granite is $1,500 for a unit and resurfacing is 500, do you think in the next 7 years you're going to turn that unit 3 times? The typical answer is yes, you'll
Yeah.
probably turn it that. Well, if you went ahead and put hard surface in there, you don't have to worry about that anymore. And there is a perceived elevated value of that property when the next buyer comes in to buy it, that you have granite. And so it tends to get you better buyers or less negotiating buyers, if you will, coming into it because it already has granite and that takes CapEx off of what they're going to have to do. So there's an advantage
Real
to that.
quick, granite versus quartz. Is there an opinion?
I'm indifferent. It depends on the
Yeah.
market, really, because
Okay.
granite and quartz is a small difference in price,
Okay.
grand scheme of things. So really, kind of whatever you're going to do.
Whatever you can get.
Yeah, yeah, whatever you
Okay.
can get. That's right.
All right.
Um,
Anything else on
so
interiors that you're seeing or that you're doing? Cabinets, flooring,
yes, we
appliances.
do very
Yeah.
little cabinets. We do very little cabinets. We do repainting and door hardware. So
Okay.
one thing that we've been doing a lot of recently is what we call in-place rehab. So we're doing cabinet pulls, door hardware, lighting, countertops in some cases, appliances, blinds, and our tech package, right? That we offer. So offering those, and I'll talk about the tech package in a second, but offering those, you can do it while the unit's occupied. So they never have to vacate. So when your leases renew, you can go ahead and go up to your pro forma rent and never have to vacate. The only things you're missing when you do that versus a full rehab is flooring and painting. Because we can't do any flooring, we can't do any painting or resurfacing that's considered painting. And the people want to stay. They feel, they touch the upgrades that you've made. You can do water conservation and some of that stuff as well that we do. But really, anything that while it's occupied, now they're like, well, shoot, they've done all this. I don't want to leave. I'll go ahead and pay the $150 a month rent bump, not leave. And I have a better place because of it. So you're seeing that actually become more successful over time because people don't want to leave.
Are they doing that like 60 days before the renewal, or are they doing it like what
Typical to
when?
water conservation, yeah. So you just kind of come in and you do the whole property. So we're doing about, I mean, we'll start at about 5 a day, but we really get up to about 10 units a day that we can do. So within 2 months, we've done a 200 unit property and you're blowing and going through the whole thing. And so over the next 12 months, you're going ahead and getting up to your performer rents instead of waiting 2 or 3 years to get there.
What do you think that in-place rehab costs per door?
Depends. So we have like a selection sheet, if you will, of
Yeah.
what to include. So it costs anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 per unit
Okay.
to do it if you do everything.
Right.
And so it's typically about 75% of what you would spend, 60 to 75% of what you would have spent on a full rehab. But we go in and you do it through the whole property, and now every unit is uniform. And then when you do have somebody move out, all you have to do is flooring and paint. You can get that done in a week, and then the unit's back online ready to rent.
It's actually a pretty good idea because a lot of people are struggling with renewals right now and then struggling with pushing renewals also. So it probably hits you or improves your NOI two ways. One is you're going to have a higher resident retention, and then you're also going to have a higher renewal just rent in general when you do that. And then when you do turn a unit over, that time to turn the unit is probably going to be reduced as well.
Yeah,
So
it's reduced by about 75%. You'd say it's, a 30-day, right? From the time it vacates to the time it's back on the market is pretty average for 1 or 2 units. But this time it's typically less than a week.
okay. So this is a question that I was going to try to get to before we went into our $2 million rehab project here. Versus, so a lot of times people are like, all right, well, I'm doing a 200 unit deal. Let's say 10 units are turning over a month, and then I'm rehabbing half of them. So the property management company is just running that rehab. Is that efficient, possible? What's the difference between just sort of you guys doing it versus, and do you want to do interior upgrades, 5 units at a property at a time, or do you want to do larger projects where you're doing bigger scopes? Tell does that make sense?
All fair
Hopefully that question
questions.
makes sense.
Yeah, all fair questions. So,
Okay.
first of all, is it good for a property management company to do it? Well, depends on your property management company because
Okay.
they can either really be very diligent and have all their junk together and do it very well, or they don't, right? And if they don't, I will say you'll know pretty fast if they tell you, oh, we can turn 5 to 10 units a month, and then you're getting one or two a month, right? Then you're going to have this huge backlog of vacants that have never been touched that you're going to have to get caught up on. So my answer to that piece is be diligent in watching them in the beginning, because if they perform, they can perform.
Okay.
And that's okay. And
Yeah.
and they will be a cheaper option. There's nothing wrong with that. But if they can't perform, don't be afraid to make the decision to switch.
Yeah.
Because if you get behind, it's just a snowball that will catch up with you.
Well, I mean, also like
If
a lot of the, like, let's say 200 units, you got two maintenance guys outside, and then they're doing work orders on all these units, and then you're like, oh yeah, I need you to
I know
rehab,
we got to
like,
get back over here.
yeah, I got to do, I got 5 or 10 vacants that are turning in July, and the ACs are going, like, not going, I mean. And so they've got to work on that, and they've got to turn the units. And so it seems difficult to
It is
upgrade the unit.
difficult, and I see it successfully done a lot less than I see it
Done
than
effectively,
I
correctly.
done effectively. Yeah.
Okay.
I you see it done both ways, and some people are okay with it and some people aren't. And one of the things we pride ourselves on are large projects and fast, right?
Yeah.
So where we're working on heavily vacated property, or pretty bad shape, we turn 30 units a month
Yep.
on those properties. And so once that starts going into effect, and we're rolling. It's hard for many people to compete with that. Once all the decisions are made, and we can get you back to stabilization fast, right? So as long as the property management is focusing on the property management piece and the operations side of it, making sure that they're getting the right tenant base and all that, just not my job, and I would not want that job, because that's a hard job in itself. Let me do what I'm good at on the construction side, and I'll promise I'll deliver the units to you so that you can do your job. And that's kind of where we work well with property management companies that see kind of how we operate in that stand.
So if you were to if you were to look at sort of like your entire portfolio of construction projects, where, maybe break it out percentage wise, what you guys are working on right now? Is it on, um, roofing? Is it interiors? Is it, and I don't even know if you can do this or if you know this, but does that make sense? Like,
Yeah, no, I'm
like,
trying to think. So
okay,
every property we do is typically pretty evenly blended between
okay,
interior and exterior.
okay.
So how many projects are we working on right now currently?
You can
I
ballpark.
think that number's 25.
Okay.
I
And
think it's 25.
okay.
And that's in Florida, Tennessee, Alabama, Jackson, Texas, Oklahoma. I
Okay.
think
All right.
that's where we're at currently.
Pretty wide. Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah.
And then, so, a lot of people are just getting started in this business, and they might go look at a property and sort of put their hand in the air and say, this looks like 5,000 a door. This looks like 10,000 a door. Rehab, sort of what we did at the beginning. But any advice for those people who are sort of just getting started in the business, besides calling you guys and having you out there at the property? Any advice when they're walking around the property, when you're walking a property? What do you typically look for? What are some of the red flags that you see when you're out there?
Yeah. So, deferred maintenance is always the one that you can look at in the visible deferred maintenance, right? So if there's a lot of wood rot around the property that's not maintained, if there's a lot of, I mean, if there's a lot of trash on the ground and things of that nature, that property, they're not watching it as close. And so that there's probably a lot more dirt under the skirt once you lift it up, if you will. And so you got to be careful, right? You got to be careful with those things, because even though what we see today, they may have painted it yesterday, just to hide what you're looking at today. So you just got to be careful of a lot of those little things. But your major items, right? HVACs, plumbing, scoping your lines, looking at your roofs, watching, handrail security and things when you're walking around the property. Are things secure? Is it tightly run? They don't have to be perfect because, my goodness, if you were looking for a perfect property, you'd never buy in multifamily.
Sure.
You would find a reason why not to buy. But you just have to know if it's negligence or if it's just, hey, they haven't got to it yet, right? And so doing that helps indicate. But appliances, what we do and what we train kind of our due diligence team is become friends with the maintenance staff, because if you become friends with the maintenance staff while you're walking this property, they are going to tell you where their problems are.
Mhm.
And the last question I always ask when we're doing a due diligence to the lead maintenance guy is, if I handed you $100,000 or $500,000, depending on the size, where would you spend it today?
Right.
And they will tell you where their biggest problems are.
Okay.
They'll go, I'd spend it on ACs, or I'd spend it on plumbing, or I would spend it here, because they're not going to tell you I would spend it on new lighting. They're going to tell you I'm going to spend it where I go and I
Yeah.
work the most, right? And
Yeah.
so asking that question is helpful. And then I would ask it to the office staff as well, because the office staff is going to give you the other piece of what's going to make the property better and easier to lease those units. So that's
Right.
kind of my go-to couple of things.
All right. No, that's perfect. I mean, I'm trying to think, is there any other things that owners are calling you about today that we did not touch on yet?
You mean, besides, do I have some money to let them borrow so they can finish their job?
Besides, yes, besides the discount they are offering you, or that you are offering them,
Right.
is there any other, maybe are there any other questions that they're asking you about, whether it's project related, whether it's about what you're seeing out there? Is there anything that, because I mean, there's probably a list, I could probably put like 5 to 10 questions that I get every day right now
Yeah.
in today's market. So
Yeah.
I'm
I will tell
curious.
you. So it's been real interesting as of late, going through this time in the market where people are really caring more about the operational side versus just trying to do something that they've always done. So you're seeing people get more in tune or in depth with their capex projects, not to save money. It's just to spend it better so that they make sure that they're dialed into that, right? So I'm seeing more people ask more questions. Hey, so are you seeing this be effective? Are you seeing this be effective? What are some things that are more effective? And similar to what I was talking about on the in-place rehab, how can I cut down on the time of my vacancies, or that? And that's really where that whole program derived from us, is people are, man, I gotta figure this out. And it was through COVID, right? We can't evict, we can't do this, but we have to hit these deadlines with our lender. And so that's kind of how it all kind of came into play. And when you do the in-place rehab, you're not doing anything, you're not putting anything in there that typically gets damaged. So they're not going to tear it up before they move out, if they're forced to move out whenever they do. So people are asking those kind of questions. Where can we spend the money that we're more effective and change our plan, our business plan? Or, hey, I've really got to dial this down. I had 15,000 or 12,000, but I only really need to spend 2,000. Where are we going to spend it? And so they're just operationally getting very focused on what to do to make the property safe, effective, but also bring the revenue that they need to bring in for the
They're,
lender.
they're trying to stretch that dollar as far as it will go.
They are.
So,
They are. And it's fair. I mean,
yeah,
shoot, we're all trying to do it, even in our business. I'm
right.
sure you guys are doing the same thing too. Everybody needs to dial it back and streamline their processes. And we've been fat and happy for a long time.
Yeah, so now it's time to go on a little bit of a diet. And
Yeah.
what is the best way, if people have a question about a new deal, people have a question maybe if on an existing deal. I really like that in-place rehab story, especially for deals that maybe you did a rehab 3 years ago, and now's not the time to sell it. You want to continue to push rents, but you need to do something on those units to move them, move them up to the next level. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
So I give my cell phone out still. It's 469-261-1190. You can follow me. It's Dax Ferguson. I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all that stuff. You can find me there. We did recently start a podcast. It's called Thrive Podcast that we're doing on YouTube, but also on Facebook, you'll see it as well. So follow us there. We're having a lot of industry leaders come on, talk about the good things in the market and the bad things in the market, because I feel that there's a lot of doom and gloom in this industry right now. And I'm trying to make sure that people understand it's still a great industry. There's still a lot of positive things happening in this industry. So very passionate about making sure people understand that.
One of my favorite guys talks about the market is like a pendulum. And basically, in 21, it was on this side of the pendulum where you could see no wrong. And
that's right.
It swings and it does not stop in the middle. The market is never in the middle where, it's not too hot, not too cold. It just swings all the way over. And it's like, I hate everything. Everything is horrible. I'm not buying anything. And it obviously is not like that, right? So, there's obviously it's going to be a little bit tougher to get deals done. It's going to be a little bit tougher to raise equity. But the guys who are buying at, let's say, 20-25% discounts right now, and they're able to hold through the next couple of years, I think they're going to be in great positions. And especially guys who come in, take care of their properties. Like we just had Mike Oxtein on here, and he's talking about, making sure he raises enough money, has the reserves, and keeps these properties for not 3 to 5 years, but some of the properties he's held for 25 years, right? So
right.
Keep reinvesting in the property, and you're going to do well. But yeah, if you start cutting corners on the condition of your property, then that's where you start going down that cycle of, all right, well, now I got to cut the rent. Now I got to take the appliance out of this unit and put in this other unit. And all of a sudden, like, you got 25 down units and you can't qualify for agency. And all of a sudden your loan comes due and you have a capital call, right? So just a whole different ball game. Well, Dax, you'll be at the Old Capital Conference. We appreciate you being a sponsor. You'll have a booth there and be able to talk to people. So we appreciate you coming on today, and I'll see you in a few weeks.
Thanks for having me, and I appreciate it. We'll see you soon.
All right. Thanks, Dax.
Thank you.